So when tax season comes around, we oftentimes hear two popular phrases: tax credit, tax deductions, and a lot of people, they kind of blur it together, right? Maybe because the word tax is in front of it, but I promise you they're not the same. A tax deduction versus a tax credit is absolutely different because of the nature and how it impacts the tax return. And if you don't understand, you could actually be leaving a lot of money on the table, thousands in certain situations, right? With that being said, my name is Rose Brown, also known as the Accountant Therapist, and I am the CEO of Brown's Advisory and Accounting Firm. And to kick things off, I want us to talk about the what is, right? What is a tax deduction? So a tax deduction, it reduces your taxable income, right? So what that looks like in an example is, let's say you've earned $50,000 and you're now eligible for a $5,000 deduction. Your taxable income would then be $45,000. All right, so 50,000 minus 5,000 brings you to 45,000. Now, that's to say you're not paying taxes on 50,000, you're paying taxes on 45,000, okay? It's important also to note that a tax deduction is not dollar for dollar. It's actually more so percentage based, and it's really using your tax rate when we talk about percentage. So let's say that same example, $5,000 in tax deduction that you were eligible for, 10%, let's say you're in a 10% tax bracket. So 10% of that 5,000 gives us $500 in tax savings, okay? Now, that covers the tax deduction component. When we look at tax credit, we see a completely different thing happening. The tax credit shrinks your tax liability. What it does is it hits your tax bill dollar for dollar. So what that says is, if you owed $3,000 and you were eligible for $1,000 in tax credit, you find yourself only owing $2,000, right? So we have 3,000 minus 1,000 brings you to $2,000, which is good. Everybody should want the tax credit, and that's where it differentiates, right? The tax credit is more favorable. It gives you more benefit. It's more advantageous. Like, take it if you can. Whereas the deduction is, again, it's more so percentage. But when we look at the tax credit, there are three important things to identify: that some tax credits are fully refundable, some are partially refundable, and others are non-refundable. So when we look at fully refundable, this is something that you can actually get back in the form of a refund, right? That means it's something that can actually be deposited in your bank account if you are eligible for it. And a popular refundable credit is the earned income tax credit, right? Now, when we look at partially refundable, we're looking at something that, hey, only a portion of this you can receive in the form of a refund. The rest can only reduce your tax liability or you lose it, right? So what that looks like in an example is the American Opportunity Tax Credit. That's an education credit that is partially refundable, which says 1,000 of that, if you're eligible for the full amount, 1,000 of that can be given to you in the form of a refund, whereas 1,500, that is non-refundable. So you can only use that against a liability or you lose it for that year, right? And then the non-refundable tax credit, we're looking at something that, just as it says, you cannot get it in the form of a refund, but it can reduce your tax liability. And even in that same instance, if you had a non-refundable tax credit and a deduction, the non-refundable tax credit could definitely be more advantageous than the tax deduction. So having this information here, it's to give you insight so that you can be more strategic in terms of what deductions versus credits you are utilizing on your tax return, right? So to kind of just bring things together, when you see a tax deduction, it's more so percentage and it impacts your taxable income. Whereas the tax credit, this shrinks your tax bill dollar for dollar, and you can even get it in the form of a refund. So it's always more advantageous to go to the tax credit rather than the tax deduction. So that kind of wraps things up. If you have any questions, drop that in the comments section. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.